I'd like to welcome everyone to our very first official webinar. So excited to have Dr. Miller joining us. And he actually came up with the title for this webinar, Beyond the Bedside, How to Prevent Nurse Burnout and Get Your Side Hustle On. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Dr. Miller. She's doctorally prepared, board certified pediatric nurse practitioner with over 14 years of experience in nursing and nursing education. She graduated from Howard University, OHU, the other HU.
The other one.
See, I went to Hampton. I just had to put that in there. We have a little bit of a rivalry, but it's all love. She graduated with her BSN from Howard in 2005. And she's worked at the bedside in multiple areas, including pediatrics, med surg, critical care for 5 years. Then she went back to school to get her master's degree, graduating with her PhD from UCLA in 2017. She was named as one of 5 Johnson & Johnson's minority nurse faculty scholars 2 years in a row. She's been teaching pre-licensure students for 8 years. And during that time, she also worked in a number of settings, including home health, hospital-based education, public health, and palliative care. She's now embarking on an entrepreneurial role as a nurse, career coach, and curriculum developer. She's the self-dubbed side hustle queen. She's passionate about helping new grads transition into the bedside, as well as helping experienced nurses prevent burnout by transitioning out. So without further delay, I will allow Dr. Miller to go on and take over, and we look forward to an exciting and informative webinar. And you guys, please participate, ask questions, get involved. This is for you, all right? And we're here to support you. So go ahead, Dr. Miller.
All right, thank you for that introduction. So I feel super honored to be here as a guest for LEBN, League of Extraordinary Black Nurses. And actually, can you tell them just a little bit about the organization and kind of why you're putting on the webinar so they know really what they're getting out of this?
Absolutely. So I don't know if any of you follow our social media pages or have seen the website, but the purpose of the League of Extraordinary Black Nurses is to provide support for Black and minority nurses, because I realized through my own experiences and hearing the experiences of other nurses of color that there just aren't enough resources out there in terms of support and guidance for new nurses, for mid-career nurses, or for those aspiring to become leaders or, faculty in academia. And so I wanted to contribute and make sure I gave back now that, I've been through the ranks and also received my PhD recently. I wanted to make sure that other nurses coming along had the support and guidance that I didn't necessarily have, or I recognize that is needed. So that's why we're here tonight. This is for you guys. Get what you need out of it. And we're going to be talking about the different areas of nursing that you can go into beyond the bedside, as the title indicates. I know I've done a few little things, a few little pockets here and there of nursing. That's what I love about this profession, is that there's just so much you can do. And there's no need for you to feel burnt out because there's so many different options. And so I'm excited that Dr. Miller agreed. And we originally started off with a whole different trajectory, but she, gave me this idea, and I said, I think a lot of nurses probably are dealing with burnout, no matter where you are in your career, whether you're entry level or you've been in it for some time. So this is helpful information for everyone. And
definitely. And as she said, I really feel passionate that, all nurses should have some sort of side hustle, and that all nurses should be thinking very proactively about how to prevent burnout. And I think that there are 2 main ways to prevent burnout, and that's kind of the direction that we're going to take today. Let me give you guys a quick agenda. We are a little bit off of our time, but we're still going to go through the same way. Instead of doing the breakout sessions, though, we'll probably just do it all as one group discussion since we're all here. But we're going to talk a little bit about burnout. So for those of you guys that haven't used Zoom before, there is a chat function, and I'll be asking you questions and having you guys either verbally respond or respond by chatting. That way that can add to our discussion. Then we're going to talk a little bit about boundary setting at work and boundary setting at home, and how that can sort of mitigate some of those burnout symptoms. And then for the grand finale, I'm going to go through 10 side hustles that you can do to prevent nurse burnout. And I'll go through the pros and cons of each of those different side hustles and kind of give you some guidance as to how to get started with that. So hopefully you guys can all see the chat function. And my first questions are really just to get an idea of what do you guys think are some of the main causes of burnout. And so you should see an option to either raise your hand electronically, where it'll let me know that you're raising your hand and you want to talk, or you can just type right into the chat box. What do you think are some of the causes of burnout? And while you're thinking about that, let's kind of make sure that we know what burnout means, right? So it's basically caused by overworking, right? A lack of job fulfillment and support. So that could be one of the reasons why, but it's a physical, mental, and emotional state that we feel. And typically when we're coming out of nursing school and looking at the poll, most of us are experienced nurses, but when we're first coming out of nursing school, we're like, yes, I'm going to go work at the bedside. I'm going to work at the ED. It's my dream. I've always been a nurse. And we don't really start thinking about our career beyond that, right? Or the fact that doing that for 12 hours, 3 days a week, or for some of us, 4 days a week, right? 5 days a week when we first started, we were probably hustling and picking up more shifts. And so we didn't realize that doing that year after year after year after year would eventually burn us out for most of us. Right? Now, we have some people that stay at the bed for 10, 20, 30 years. More power to them. This presentation is more geared towards those of us who worked, we got a solid bedside experience, and now we're kind of like, and now what, right? And so the nursing burnout may not even be just because you're overworked. It can also be that you're not feeling fulfilled enough because you feel like all you're doing is the bedside hustle. So let's see, we got a chat. One person said patient workload. So that's definitely part of burnout. And that's part of one of the reasons why we get burned out, particularly if we're working in critical care areas, emergency department, or in different settings where we're working with high-risk populations. I mainly work pediatrics, as Dania was saying when she did my introduction. So I've worked pediatric critical care, and one of the most stressful jobs I had was at UCLA in their pediatric intensive care unit. It was beyond stressful. Every day I would come to work. I wouldn't say that the workload itself was heavy, but the stress of the babies dying, the parents needing that emotional support and guidance, and me being so young and early in my career, that was really, really stressful. What do you guys think are some other causes of burnout? Dania, what have you seen with what? And Dania's kind of being shy. She's not telling you guys what she does, but she's a nurse manager. I believe it's a labor and delivery unit. What are some reasons you see why nurses are burned out?
Well, just like you said, I think it comes from a place of frustration. So they get tired of the day in, day out of, not so much that they're tired of patient care, but it's the same kind of routine over and over again. Well, not so much in labor and delivery because those are like adrenaline junkies. But sometimes doing the same thing repetitively can get mundane. I agree with. I believe it was it Vanessa that said the patient load.
That was Ashley, actually.
Ashley, I'm sorry. So absolutely. As an administrator, we are asking nurses today to do a whole lot more with less. So the physical workload is a lot, and we definitely respect and understand that. Fulfillment. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that you didn't touch on that I've personally felt.
So Vanessa gave us some good comments. She also talked about workplace violence, and that's becoming a huge issue right now in nursing. We are definitely shifting our mindset on that. Some of you guys have been nurses much longer than I have. I've been a nurse about 14 years, but definitely even back when I was in nursing school, it was kind of an expectation, you know, that patients might hit you, and they kind of almost groomed us that way in nursing school. Like, you know, don't wear your stethoscope around your neck because they might choke you out. That's a part of your everyday job, and you might get kicked on and spit on and hit on. And now nurses feel much more empowered to where we are addressing that. But that workplace violence, that is real, especially if you're working for a facility that doesn't have protocols in place. Vanessa also talked about ratios. I am lucky to be in the state of California where we have nurse-patient ratios. It was the driving factor as to why I did not stay at Howard and stay in that area and came back to California, because the nurse ratios were better and we had a stronger nursing union, and I felt like I would be better protected. Vanessa also talked about shift demands, similar to what Dania was saying. We're expected to do a lot more now with less, including the electronic charting, a lot more education, worrying about HCAP scores. So it's a lot more on us, whereas, you know, old school nursing was like, here, do what we say do, right? And now it's about making our patients feel a certain way, and for good reason, but it's a lot of stress and demand on us, particularly with those patient ratios. And LaTanya actually said the same thing, definitely the ratios. And so those are some things, but what do you guys think is the role of the nurse manager? So someone like Dania, who is the nurse manager of a unit, or even the charge nurse, you can put it, again, you can chat it, put it in the chat box there. Do they have an obligation, right? So us looking at, is burnout something that we're experiencing? Is it our perspective? Is it the way that we're perceiving things and taking things in? Or are there some external factors that can possibly be controlled by the nurse manager or the charge nurse? So give me your opinion there, your knowledge there, in terms of what do you think is the role of the nurse manager in terms of preventing that burnout? Let me know. And I can kind of start it off. We'll see while you guys are typing. So I think definitely, and I talk to my new grad clients about this, as Dania said, I am a nurse career coach, and so I help counsel and coach everyone from nursing students all the way up to PhD level students to give me dissertation support. And so, so let's actually go to LaTanya's first, and then I'll bounce back on. So she talked about adequate staffing and support. And so with my new grad clients, I'm always talking to them about making sure they choose a hospital that has certain policies and procedures in place to make sure there's adequate staffing and adequate support. So I think that's definitely the role of the nurse manager, and the nurse manager is highly incentivized to do that, right? Because turnover is going to create more healthcare costs. It's going to throw off their budget. They don't want to have to continuously, you know, hire and orient new nurses constantly. And so they have a huge incentive to make sure that you as nurses are not burned out, right? But often we don't feel empowered as nurses, and we don't speak up and go to our nurse manager and tell them that we're feeling burned out. Instead, we just kind of call off, right? Or leave that job, right? And not even say anything when there may have been things that could have been done. Even to the charge nurse level, the charge nurse also has the responsibility in preventing burnout as well during that actual shift, and making sure that you feel well supported, making sure that they are delegating the right assignments to the right nurses, right? Not giving this new grad nurse assignments that are beyond their capabilities. That one difficult patient, we used to have this, when I worked at Long Beach Memorial Hospital, we had this patient who was, we'll just say, problematic, and none of the nurses wanted to have this patient. And I had a good rapport with that patient, a good rapport with that family, and so they continuously gave me that patient, right? But it came to a point where I went to the nurse manager like, look, I need a break from being this patient's primary nurse, right? So even in terms of the staffing and the assignment, that charge nurse has a responsibility as well. Now, our last discussion question here is, what are ways that you are actually preventing burnout? Because I'm going to talk to you guys about the two main causes and the two main ways that I think we can prevent burnout. But I would love to hear from you guys in terms of what do you think are ways to prevent nursing burnout? So go ahead and put that in the chat. And thank you, LaTanya, for answering that. You can either put it in the chat or you can even just verbally talk it out to us. Let us know. We want it to be an interactive discussion.
I am sorry, can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I've been trying to unmute myself for the longest and I could not figure out how. I'm a critical care nurse, and I think one of the things things we have adopted thus far to help prevent burnout is starting, trying to go day by day. And the one thing that we do that some people were against, but we've kind of won over a lot of people, is to have like a full shift debrief after the shift. Just because everybody who's a nurse typically has some kind of outside life, some kind of dynamic outside life. And so it's always preached that you shouldn't bring work home and home to work and things like that, but nobody really teaches you how to separate the two, or how to let go of work when you clock out, or, and it can be very hard when you're either new or when you switch to specialty or any of that. So one of the things we have adopted is doing a after shift debrief. So we try to make sure we're helping each other throughout the shift so that everybody can get done around the same time with charting and all. And so we kind of just sit in the break room and, whether it's complaining, whether it's venting, whether it's being emotional, whether it's talking about the situation that went wrong, or lab, or pharmacy not coming up, or, anything that frustrated you for that shift. We kind of just have a big debrief at the end of the shift. And it has really helped people to be able to come in the next day refreshed, because it's like, I was able to talk about it, especially with people who know and understand what I'm saying. It's one thing to go home to your husband and your wives and, talk to them, but nobody really understands what a nurse goes through but another nurse. So that is a big thing that we have tried to do on a day-to-day basis to try to prevent burnout.
Wow.
And I think it's good.
Thank you. And tell us your name. I'm sorry, because we can't see your name, just your phone number.
I'm sorry, I'm Shayla.
Shayla. Okay, I'm going to mute you just for a second so your background noise won't hit. So Shayla brought up some excellent points, and I can attest to working in critical care. We did debriefing mainly after colds, and that was a huge way that helped us relieve that stress and not get burned out from having cold after cold after cold, because again, I was at UCLA. It was a high acuity. The babies pretty much were dying once a shift, and so we were all kind of stressed out about that, especially the younger ones of us who are in our early 20s. That was just a lot for us to deal with. But even just the day-to-day things, and I can imagine, Ashley, that was difficult in the beginning to get that buy-in from nurses, but I can see after a while what the benefit of that could be and what the incentive of the nurse manager would be to implement that. Let's also look at some other comments here. Exercising outside of work, definitely. So when we feel better about ourselves and when our body feels better, we're less physically burned out, because remember, we said our definition of burnout is that you can be physically, mentally, or emotionally exhausted. And Kurt is bringing up a good point and actually going to lead us into our going through our discussion of the 10 side hustles, which is talking about projects outside of work, personal growth, and development. So we went through nursing school and we're super focused on this nursing career. And then sometimes we get enmeshed into this nursing career and really kind of forget about our lives outside of that, right? So even besides just work projects and professional growth and development, just personal growth and development, right? Things like learning a new skill, like learning how to play an instrument, or I used to take, when I was in the PhD program at UCLA, those 6 years were the most stressful years of my entire life. And so one thing, I actually did a couple of things to kind of relieve stress, but one thing I definitely did was I took an improv class. It was completely unrelated to nursing. It was, on the side. And yes, I had to find time to do that, but it was 2 hours a week, I think twice a week or once or twice a week, maybe an hour or so. And it was just a chance for me to do something outside of nursing that stimulated my creativity and gave me an outlet so that I had something else to look forward to. Personal growth and development is something that I am very, very passionate about. And as I talk about the two different main causes of burnout, which I think are lack of boundaries, right? And not having a side hustle or a side project or side interest. And so that personal growth and development part leads right into that boundary setting discussion that we're going to have right now before I go through those 10 side hustle ideas. And so it's about a couple of things, but knowing yourself, because, for example, we could all, as Shayla was talking about that debrief, we could all have been in a code, let's say, right? All 5 of the nurses that were working that day. And then when we debrief, some of us are going to have a more difficult time handling what happened than others, right? So some people are going to take on more guilt and more responsibility. And that's what we talk about with those muddy boundaries. Other people are going to be able to have a healthy level of detachment, emotional detachment from their job and from that experience, and be able to objectively look at that and go home and come back the next day, right? So that personal growth and development becomes a factor. For example, when I'm coaching my new grads, a lot of them will come to me saying they're feeling bullied. Right. And so but then when we go through the scenario, we start to talk about it, they're not being bullied. They are perceiving that they're being bullied. Right. It's like that saying that says, am I intimidating or are you intimidated? Right. So they're feeling bullied because their preceptor said, hey, you need to really work on your time management. And they weren't used to nursing culture that was so direct and give such direct feedback. So that personal growth, I work with them on feeling whole so that they're not upset and crying in the bathroom because the physician was mean to them, you know, and things like that. So that's what we talk about when we terms of personal growth and development, making sure that you're whole inside so that the way that you perceive things that are going on at work are not overly affecting you in that way. So let's look at that boundary setting. If any other comments, you guys can put that on down in there. But if not, we're going to move on to that next part of the agenda. And again, I think there are 2 main reasons that cause the burnout. And yes, the staffing and all of those things are definitely a factor, but definitely learning how to set boundaries at work and at home can help us not be so mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. So what is boundaries in a nutshell is us being able to separate our problems from other people's problems, right? So for example, when they're calling you to pick up that 4th shift and you're already tired, you're already overworked, you already feel exhausted, you already had a rough day, you're not working at a hospital like Shayla's where you get to debrief every shift, right? And so, but you feel so guilty because you know Dania is trying to staff her unit, right? You don't want to, you love Dania and you don't want to disappoint Dania. And so you come in for that extra 4th shift, even though physically, mentally, and emotionally, you don't have it in you, right? Even though that may take away from what's going on at home or with your kids or keeping healthy relationships because you're working so much. And so, but your main reason for going in is not because you need and want the money, but because you feel so guilty behind staffing, right? Boundary setting is separating your issues and concerns and your problems from others. So a lot of us in the PICU were burned out because we did not know how to say, especially the ones of us that were in our early 20s, when that mother, when her daughter was dying, you know, we took that on, right? So we hadn't learned yet how to set healthy emotional boundaries to where we can demonstrate compassion, therapeutic communication, be supportive of our patients, but not take it. I mean, I would go home and think about my kids all night long. I would sometimes call the unit or text my coworkers on the low, like, hey, how is such and such doing, right? I'm out at a party wondering what's going on with this little baby that I had earlier today, right? Because I didn't know how to set clear boundaries, like Ashley said, leaving it at the door both ways. The problems and everything that you had going on at work work need to stay at work once you leave work. And then the problems and everything that you have going on at home need to stay at home, right? And at home can be another thing that's burning us out. Because what if we're working 12-hour shifts, right? And coming home to a household where we're expected to do, let's say, certain household functions that we're too exhausted to do. So are we setting appropriate boundaries? Are we coming home and we have a 15-year-old son, right? We just walked in the door. Our 15-year-old son is like, where's my football cleats? I don't know. I've been at work all day, right? So now you feel it's your duty and responsibility to, even though you just worked this long 12-hour shift, to search all around the house for this boy's football cleats, when he can be accountable for his own football cleats, right? He's a adolescent who's definitely capable of it, right? So in terms of setting boundaries at home, in terms of housework and house function and how you divide chores and what you do when I come home from a 12-hour shift, I'm not doing nothing. I'm not cooking, I'm not cleaning, I'm not doing anything. I will catch them on those other days, right? And so it's about making sure that you're setting those boundaries. So what does it look like? It looks like saying no without guilt, right? Whether you're saying no to other people that are asking you to do things, even though you're tired and just got off of work and they're asking you, I will say a common request, I live in LA, is, can you take me to LAX? It's nothing you can do to convince me to take you to LAX. I'm not going to do it, right? So, but I don't have a problem saying no without guilt. I am like a boundary setting fanatic, okay? So this is like, I feel was such a huge turning point in my life when I learned how to set boundaries, helped me from being not as burned out, because I will leave that job if I have to. I will leave a relationship if I have to. I will say no to friends if I'm too tired, right? So it's about not letting yourself get burned out because of those factors that are within your control. Because you can't always control staffing and ratios and charge nurse and patient workload and all of that. And what if you're not in a position to leave that job? But there are some things that you can control, right? So saying no without guilt, not feeling responsible for other people's feelings, not absorbing negative energy. You know that nurse, that one nurse that you work with, or even coworker, right? That has that negative energy, has that negative energy, and you're like, oh man, I don't want to go to work because she's charged tonight or he's charged tonight. So, right? I'm not going to let somebody else's negative energy, I'm not going to absorb that, right? I can't change the fact that I have to work tonight. I can't change the fact that such and such is charge nurse and that they always come in grumpy and have negative mood and energy. But I can make sure that I'm not absorbing that, right? Making other people accountable for their actions, being unbothered by others' opinions. That's a huge one for my new grads. It is the biggest thing for my new grads, honestly, because they're so caught up and worried about whether or not this nurse thinks they're stupid, or this doctor thinks they're incompetent, or this nurse thinks that they're going to be a bad nurse, right? They're so absorbed and caught up in that honestly, I'm coaching them through really just boundary setting. We're not even talking about, this is how you do your assessment in your head to toe. I'm talking to them about, why does another person's opinion of you matter more to you than your own opinion of yourself, right? So that personal development that Kurt talked about is about being whole and working on yourself, so that those types of things. So some people want to leave the bedside, but they're hearing all of this outside opinion on, like, don't leave the bedside, you're going to lose your skills. Don't leave the bedside, are you still going to be a nurse? The words and thoughts that swirl in other people's head, they just don't concern me. They just don't bother me, right? And then that last one is choosing how to spend your time and energy. That is huge, right? So if you're forced to work, you can't leave that job, you can't change the ratios and things like that, then you want to make sure that you are choosing how you spend that time. And Keith gave us a great point. You're empowering yourself at the same time, and you will feel that. You want to feel empowered. A lot of us feel burned out because we feel stuck. We feel like we have no other options, right? But I'm going to give us 10 options right now We got our last couple 15 minutes, and we can still have some discussion afterwards, but I want to give us some options to think about in terms of preventing burnout. Let me move this to the side. Hopefully you guys can see it. You can put in the chat room, let me know if your whole screen is visible, because I know I have the pictures on the side. Some of these side hustles are for experienced nurses. I think I have one of them that applies just to nurse practitioner, but the main key is, let's see, all right, we're good. But the main key is that you want to slowly bridge into your side hustle. And any of us in this room that have a side hustle can tell you that you're not always making that leap away from the bedside, because bedside is your bread and butter. Bedside is what pays. Bedside is, I know I can pick up that fourth shift if I need to and make that money, right? The side hustles are a little less unsure, a little less secure, shall I say, but in the end will give you more flexibility. But often these side hustles are things you have to develop over time. So I'm going to go through the 10 side hustles, pros and cons of each, and then we're going to talk about how you should choose a side hustle, because you don't want to get burned out from the side hustle, right? So my main rule of thumb is another bedside shift should not be your side hustle. So what you won't see on this list are things like travel nursing, per diem, picking up a per diem registry shift. Those are all great. I don't necessarily consider those side hustles because those are just additional shifts at the bedside, okay? All right, so let's get going with some, first one will be educational-based services. So this would include you being a CPR instructor, you doing first aid in the community, you doing tutoring, NCLEX preparation. This is a bit bigger. It's going to be a little harder to do on your side, but even opening up your own CNA school, and which is not that difficult to do. I've actually looked into it and considered it quite a bit, and there are consultants that can walk you through that, but it really wasn't that difficult. It was about me writing the curriculum, making sure I had a secure contract with the nursing facility, having a space for the students. But I know there are a lot of CNA programs where I live in Los Angeles that operate right out of their house, and they will bring 10 students in, charge them $1,200 a pop, do a 10, 12, 16-week rotation at the SNF, get them certified, and crank them in and out. So that's really good money. Some of the pros and cons of doing educational-based services is that they are always in demand. You always are going to have nursing students that need some sort of tutoring, especially NCLEX prep. So you can also do things like what we call grab and goes. There's a group that I'm part of. It's on Facebook. I'm not endorsing this group at all. It's just a group that I am part of, but it's called Surviving Nursing School with Angie, I believe it is. And she has a lot of grab and goes, which are kind of like PDFs that she's created that will go over like diseases or cardiac systems, or giving them sort of tips. So it's actually focused on their nursing content, and the students pay like $10 a pop, and they get these what we call grab and goes. They can download them. And so she's making passive income just by doing that. That is really my biggest focus that I'm doing right now. And I was talking to Dania. I actually had a chance to have lunch with Dania the other day at this fabulous Caribbean restaurant that she picked out in Brooklyn. And I was talking to her about what I'm working on right now, which is launching an online nursing academy for new graduate nurses that will have, so I'm creating the curriculum right now that will have a bunch of online courses for them that are based on soft skills and not the hard skills. So it'll be things like assertive communication, time management, critical thinking, etc. So my goal is to, at some point, make passive income. I am doing the coaching, and I think that's number 8 or 9 that I talk about towards the end. But the coaching exchanges my time for money, right? Which is great, side hustle getting started. But our long-term goal for us side hustling, if we really want freedom, is to be able to make some sort of passive income. Some of the cons with doing any of these educational-based things is that it may require investment in terms of time and money. So if you have to be able to create curriculum for a lot of this, or be able to market for some of this, And so that may be a factor. I actually used to work for an organization called FlexEd, where I did, that was my favorite side hustle. They basically contract you out to do hospital-based education. So they would say, hey, Sherika, we need someone to come teach our new grads time management. And I would go to the hospital and teach them time management. As part of that organization, I could have become a CPR provider, a PALS provider, an NRP provider, ACLS provider, and that was free of charge because I was affiliated with their organization. But that's what I mean by time and money in terms of if you wanted to start doing CPR, you have to have a client base, right? All right, number 2, a little more controversial, but definitely booming and definitely something that's hot right now, and that is going into the cannabis industry. You can do this a couple of different ways. I know some nurses that flat out manage patients that are on CBD, different like CBD for back pain or muscle strains or even anxiety or depression, and they manage those patients either remotely, through insurance, or just on a cash basis. So they have a market to where they have patients who want to try different CBDs, but they want a nurse to kind of guide them. You could also do education. You could do also, you could do actual, what am I thinking of? Products, right? So I attended this webinar with CanSum, which is an organization. It's a young Black lady who does, she actually certifies, you know them, Dania?
She was one of our previous features.
Okay. So you guys some of you guys may already know her. And she actually, her name okay, Latanya, her name is hot. Okay. So I don't know her personally. I just attended her webinar because I'm always, it's like Keith said, I'm trying to get my professional development on. So I want to learn about everything.
Check her out on Instagram. She, if you scroll back on the LEBN page, you can connect with her.
Oh yeah, I've connected with her, definitely. I've talked to her, but I just don't know her personally though. But I've connected to her through Instagram and went through her webinars and things. And she actually certifies nurses, right, to become cannabis consultants. So her Instagram name, I believe, is a CEO nurse. We'll have Dania type it in there, but the name of her organization, I believe, is CanSum. I believe it's CAN. We'll get that information and put that in the chat box for you guys. And so she certifies nurses, and she has this 8-hour course where basically she will walk you through all of the cannabinoids and all of the pathophysiology and the science behind it, the interactions, so that you can be a certified cannabis consultant. So that's one way to go about it. And there it is, the nurse CEO CanSum. There you go. CANSOOM, Ashley CanSum, and then her Instagram is the nurse CEO. And so while we were in the webinar, she had one person on her panel that talked about that they make products, right? So they make this THC massage oil and partnered with a massage therapy school or like a spa. So basically her products are in the spa and the massage therapists use it when they're doing the different massages. So I thought that was a wonderful idea. It's a growing market, can have huge profit margins right now. It's booming, particularly if it's legal in your state. I'm in California, so you know it's legal in my state. But some of the cons, and she actually talked about this as well in the webinar, is the stigma. So, you know, overall, I'm not sure if it's something that I will personally do because I teach. And so I have nursing students. So I think if I was working bedside, I would be less concerned about, you know, my image or what that looks like. But because I teach nursing students, I'm constantly, you know, aware of my online presence. And also I work for a university and I'm not sure how that would conflict. So that's something to think about. But she's actually the one you want to go to. I don't know enough about the actual industry to tell you the legalities and how that will affect your job, but I wanted to put that one out there. All right, next one is the easy one that everybody should know about, is working the flu clinic circuit. It is now the fall and winter, so all of the flu clinic jobs are going to be coming out. Some of the pros is that it's a flexible schedule, pretty low stress. You can just pick up a couple hours, and I do this just to do it. I go and do a 4-hour shift from 8 to 12 just to make some extra money. I know it's pretty much a mindless, you know, activity activity. I'm just going to talk and do injections all day. It's a little less money because it's a pretty easy skill set. Once you have about 6 months experience, they'll take you, but that's another just quick idea. Infusion nursing was something that I did for a little while, and you can do this with the companies such as Walmart or CVS's. Our Walmart and CVS's have minute clinics where they're staffed with nurse practitioners, and a lot of them also have an infusion aspect where they're going to people's houses. I did it for pediatrics. Most of my patients have portacaths and were receiving antibiotics, so maybe they needed long-term antibiotics. I also actually had some some patients that had infections in the bones that needed like 8 weeks of antibiotics. So those kids would have a PICC line, and instead of having them in the hospital, it's much cheaper to have a nurse. So it's kind of home health is one way to do it, unless you're going to an infusion center. I was going to their houses, cleaning the ports and all of that, doing their infusion, and then disconnecting them. If they had a portacath, I was actually de-accessing them until I came back the next week. I was also just doing dressing changes. You could do it for an actual infusion center, pretty good money, a lot of autonomy if you're doing it in the home health sector. But some of the cons were some of my patients got weekly peripheral IVs. And if I couldn't get that stick, okay, and I'm in their living room with their whole family staring over me, and I could not get that stick, so that was a little bit stressful. Plus, you can make medical errors because you're doing infusions. You can cause infections, essential line infections, and there was a lot of documentation involved in that. All right, moving on along. So these type of jobs, I kind of lump them all together. These are typically remote kind of jobs where you're doing utilization reviewing, utilization management, auditor. And so basically what you're doing is looking at people's data, or looking at, you can work for a hospital or for an insurance company. You're looking at data and charts. You're determining whether or not the hospitals are using best practices, ways to save the company's money, helping set protocols and policies for what to do for certain conditions. And it's actually pretty good pay. I don't know if I would want to do it because it's a little isolating for me. Sitting in front of my computer and just kind of doing paperwork can be a little tedious, but it's definitely in high demand. You can do it remotely, which will be great because that's something you can do on your last day off. You know, so you work your 3 days and then maybe take a few days off and then do this as an auditor, a chart auditor or something of that nature. So this is definitely something to look into. You can get certified in these areas as well. You don't necessarily have to get the jobs, but this is good. It's a good pay. It just can be isolating. This is an exciting one that I actually learned from one of my coaching clients who is a nurse practitioner. So this is one that is geared specifically towards nurse practitioner, and that is being a SUBOXONE provider. So there was a law that was passed, I believe in 2015 or 2016, to help combat opioid addiction. And that law gave mid-level providers, which are considered PAs and nurse practitioners, the ability to prescribe and manage SUBOXONE. So prescribe SUBOXONE to patients and then manage their aftercare. This is huge money, big business. So what she did was she used to work for a company where she was the one going out and doing it. And she was like, I could be doing this myself. So what she did was left the company, created her own business, and ended up getting a contract back with the company, okay? So she's doing the exact same thing, but now she's an independent contractor because there are not a lot of SUBOXONE providers. You have to get certified. The certification is free. It's through, as a SAMHSA, I gotta look at my notes, but it's through, basically you can just Google it, SUBOXONE provider certification. And then once you have your hours and everything, and it's a free certification, but you do have to do the modules and do the hours and everything. But there aren't a lot of nurse practitioners and PAs who can do it. Physicians can automatically do it, right? But we have to do that additional training. So because of that, she was in high demand. Why work for them when she could leave them, start her own business, got her LLC, got legalized and all of that, and then went back and just contracted with them? So she told me Are you ready? That she makes $175 per hour, and she works 3 6-hour shifts a week. And that's it. And that was her full, and that basically was matching what, because she's in a DNP program, or she's in a PhD program now. So that was definitely, talking about Lolita. Yeah, so that was definitely, yes, LaTanya. That's why I said, wow. I was like, you need to be coaching me. Why am I coaching you? If you're making $175 an hour, you need to be coaching me, right? But some of the cons that she did tell me was that it's a challenging population. And so if you've already worked in substance abuse and mental health, this may not be challenging for you. For someone like me that works in P's, we're nice and friendly. You know, my little 7-year-olds aren't drug seekers. So when I did work adult med surg, I was like, dang, all I'm doing is passing pain meds all day. I don't like this, right? So that might not work for me. But some of the pros is that it is in very high demand. If you're a nurse practitioner, very good pay. You can work remotely. And I would advise doing what she's doing, what she did, which is be an independent contractor. So you can start working for a company, but just be an independent contractor and get contracts for different organizations so you can charge them more. All right, I should have numbered these. I don't know what number we on, but we getting down there. I think we're on 8 or 9 or so. Let me see. I think I see a comment. Hold on. I want to make sure I'm getting to your chats. Thank you. I'm definitely going to research that. Yeah, LaTanya, that is something to research. So just put in SUBOXONE provider certification for NPs, and it'll walk you through the modules. She said it was pretty easy, and after that, you are good to go. All right, the next one is health and wellness coaching, not to be confused with nurse-to-nurse coaching, which is the next one that I'll get to. I believe that's the last one. So health and wellness coaching organizations, let's say like Kaiser, may want health and wellness coaches to help their clients meet their health goals. So let's say they have heart failure patients that they want to lose weight and have a low sodium diet. So you being their health and wellness coach, you're checking in with them, you're providing guidance and resources and support, keeping them on track with their goals, reevaluating their goals and coming up with a new plan. And best of all, you can do a lot of this remotely, even by telephone, but a lot of it now is becoming video, so it needs to be kind of a web camera setup. But you definitely have the ability to work remotely. It's in high demand. Sorry, that bottom part I think is a typo. I think that's from my duplicate slide. But some of the cons to that, so don't look at the cons right there. Some of the cons to doing health and wellness coaching is you either have to be working for an organization, or it's a lot of nurses that do it independently, but you need a client base. The main one that I know of, and again, I'm not endorsing these individuals, I'm just saying these are individuals that I follow because I like to know about all the side hustles, so I be all in their business, is Whole Life Nurse. Just WHOLE Life Nurse, all one word. And she is a wellness coach, I believe. And actually, she talks a lot about boundary setting. She has some great information on boundary setting and how to prevent burnout. And so you can become certified in this area. You could do health and wellness coaching for just direct paying clients that are trying to lose weight, or more holistic type of coaching, wellness coaching. So that's something to think about, but you may actually need some marketing and startup for that if you do it independently. The next one is freelance writing, something we may not think about often, right? This is going to be a lot harder to start up, a lot slower of a revenue, but maybe something that you're passionate about. And that, remember, the whole goal is to prevent burnout. So it's great when our preventing burnout I always say we want our passion to align with our paycheck, but sometimes in the beginning, that's not always possible, right? Sometimes in the beginning, you're kind of doing this passion project that over time will lead into things like Whole Life Nurse. When she was talking about her beginning, she was talking about how she started her blog and that it took a while before her blog monetized, but in the beginning, she wasn't doing it for money. She was doing it as a creative outlet. So freelance writing, the main two ways would be creating your own blog or being a freelance writer for nurse magazines such as Minority Nurse, etc. And you can actually Google freelance nursing writing jobs. Sometimes they are on a volunteer basis in the beginning, so you may not even be getting paid. So this is something to think about. It's a very competitive market, slow revenue, but it could possibly fulfill a passion that will keep you from getting burned out, right? So it may not be about the money always, but that you need a creative outlet that is nursing related. Maybe you want to write about burnout, okay? And then after you've been writing about burnout for a year or two and you have established yourself as this burnout expert, then maybe you can write a book on burnout and then get the passive income, right? So some of these side hustles are not about quick money, but about building a foundation so that at some point you can have the freedom that you want, but you got to put in that groundwork as well. So freelance writing is one that I want you to think about. Another one that nurses often don't think about is going into sales and having some sort of merchandise. So you guys see my shirt that says melanated and educated, right? I'm thinking about getting a shirt that say like nurses who hustle, or side hustle queen or something, right? I can get those shirts, make those shirts, set up an Etsy page or a Shopify page, put that link right on my Instagram and directly be selling merchandise that's passive income. The main person I've seen that does this, and this person I actually do endorse, is actually a close colleague of mine, is the Trap Nurse. The Trap Nurse on Instagram. She has these really dope hats that have, it says like the Trap Nurse on there, has a little pill on there, and her whole Instagram page is basically about being like I'm a nurse, but I kind of have like this trap side too because I'm hustling and I'm not what the typical nurse looks like. So she built the whole brand behind that, and now she has hats and t-shirts and things like that, and that's just passive income. It's just a link on her page. She has to market, yes, but the money is making itself. So you could sell things like clips that go, the badge clips, scrubs. People don't design whole scrub lines, right? What else could you could make like the Prepper Nurse, I believe, is another one that I'm following that made these like blood pressure kits, right? So, which I was like, wow, that's a genius idea. So thinking about those things, nurse bags, different kind of personalized stethoscopes. If you have any kind of background in sales or are interested in that, that might be a good way to go. You can do that remotely. You can be creative and autonomous, but it may require some overhead in terms of getting your actual merchandise. Now, I can tell you that Trap Nurse, I believe, uses a third party, and so she doesn't have to actually have the inventory. When you make the purchase, it comes directly from there to her. There's actually a name for that. So there's different ways that you could do that where you don't have to have as much overhead. My mom also owns a boutique in Phoenix, and so she knows how to get all of her stuff wholesale online, and then she can personalize it, and she'll put her little stuff on there, and hers is Married to the Grind. It runs in the family, guys. So her whole little slogan is Married to the Grind, and she has all these shirts and stuff that she gets made that says Married to the Grind, and she sells right in her store. So it doesn't always have to be directly nursing related. You don't have to sell nursing related merchandise, right? So that's a big thing, is that we get so stuck in our nursing career that we think every other side hustle we have has to be nursing related. But Keith is in real estate. He can talk to us about that later, and not directly related to nursing, right? But marketing his real estate business to nursing and financial management and investments and things like that. So it doesn't always have to be directly nursing related. Our last one is the nurse-to-nurse coaching and consulting. Different from being a health coach or wellness coach, this is you providing direct consultation and coaching to other nurses. So I'm a nurse career coach. Basically what I do is see clients just like this via Zoom one-on-one. It could be nurses that have just graduated, that are getting ready to interview, that need some interview guidance. It could be nurses that are dealing with bullying and burnout and need ways to figure that out. It could be nurses who are just trying to come up with the initial brainstorming of a side hustle hustle and how to get in that general direction. So if you want to go into the cannabis business, I'm not necessarily the one to consult you and coach you through that. But if you just like, I need a side hustle, I don't know where to start, I can help you align your passions with your paycheck and put you in the right direction. And then you're probably going to need a higher level consultant that specializes in opening up a CNA school or can specialize in teaching you how to start with merchandise, right? So that's my nurse to nurse coaching. I also do dissertation support, etc. So the cons of that is it's a competitive market. It's a lot of nurse coaches out there, and it's a market that's built on trust and reputation. They have to see you, then they know you, then they trust you. So I basically just started my Instagram by just putting out the content, not soliciting, not marketing, not asking for clients. I'm just going to keep putting out quality content, and those clients just slide in my DM. Hey, I saw your post about nurse burnout. What can I do about that? Oh, I'm glad you asked. I'm a nurse coach. So if you want to talk about it, this is what my fee is, right? Because it's basically, I started it because I was getting so overwhelmed with mentoring nursing students and all of the people that will come to me. I need an hour of your time to talk to me about the different options in nursing school. So after a while, I was like, I need to start getting paid for this knowledge because I'm just spending a lot of time giving away free game and no, right? Then the consulting could be like, for example, how Dania has launched League of Extraordinary Black Nurses. What if I wanted to launch an organization and didn't know how? So I could go to Dania and she can consult with me, right? So there are a lot of nurse business consultants that will walk you through the actual legalities of how to start your business, how to brand, how to market. And the main person that I can think of with that is Chicks with Checks. She's on Instagram. She's a branding and marketing guru, a young Black woman, and a nurse, I believe. And so you can definitely do that nurse-to-nurse coaching. It's very flexible. You have an unrestricted earning potential. One other con is that you still are exchanging your time for money, but your goal is to keep creating higher level products, right? Like Kansoom did. Instead of doing one-on-one consulting, she can have a class of 30 people that she's charging $1,000 or $2,000 for to take her certification course. And so even though she's exchanging time for money, those 4 hours or those 8 hours is going to yield her much more money than if she had consulted with 8 different clients in that regard. So hopefully that made sense. And one other thing I want to tell you really quick, I know we're a little bit off this, out of time, just a little bit, but there's 2 things you should really be thinking about when you're choosing your side hustle. One is to make sure it is something that you are passionate about. You don't want to pick another hustle or another job that's just going to be like, oh, now I got to go and do this, right? So make it something that you're passionate about. Now, I may not be passionate about flu clinics, okay? But it's also very low stress. It's something I can just kind of mindlessly do. But if you're embarking on merchandise or coaching or CNA school or real estate or things like that, you need to be passionate about it. And the second thing you want to do, and how I help my clients, is you want to bridge on something you're already good at and you know how to do. I've been teaching and mentoring for years. Going into coaching was just a natural, direction for me. I've been writing curriculum for 8 years. So for me to build this online nursing academy was a natural transition. I'm not really good at sales, so I'm not going to go into merchandising. I've never really worked with substance abuse patients, so I don't know if I want to go that lane, right? So you're picking something that's already close to you, that you have a skill set, a passion, and some kind of entryway to. Maybe you already know someone that does it, so it's not just coming out of the blue. All right, so any final comments, questions, or concerns? And hopefully that was some good tips for you guys. Any other final words? Latanya said that is one of my side hustles as well. I believe she was talking about the coaching. Put in the comments and tell us what you were talking about there. Oh, merchandise. Okay. Latanya, do you want to unmute yourself really quick and tell us about that? Okay. I already unmuted you.
Yeah. Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted already.
I was going crazy trying to find the button. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So, Yeah, I started a page on Instagram at Nursing Goals. And I
Oh,
did like a hey, and I did a giveaway of a t-shirt design that I made on my phone through an app called Canva. So I was like, oh, let me try this out and see if people will like it. And I gave it away. I was supposed to do one, but I was like, oh no, I gave it away to like 10 people. And they were like, how can I get this shirt? Their friends saw them in it. And I was like, oh, shoot, I guess I got to try to make this kind of legit. And I started a store. So now I create like t-shirts, nursing t-shirts, affirmation t-shirts and things like that. So that's my little side hustle.
it just
Awesome.
kind of roll. And let me tell you guys something about Latanya. I didn't realize that was her. So if you're doing anything that requires you to have an online presence, you need to be building genuine relationships with people. And when I first joined, and so I have my own personal Instagram, you know, that was popping, okay. Then I started the Nurse Doc Miller. You guys can follow me on Instagram. It's Doc Miller Nurse Coach, all one word. So I'm starting like 4 followers, right? Just my friends. And Latanya was one of the first people that reached out to me, one of the first people that was liking all of my stuff, reposting my stuff, sending me messages, hey, you, and so it was just a genuine relationship that we have built. So don't you think I would be more willing to buy a shirt from her, right? And so any of these things that you have, same thing with I can't remember if it's Keith or Kurt. Sorry, I keep saying your name wrong, but we have connected over LinkedIn. So you want to be building genuine, Dania, same way how we connected, right? So if you're doing anything that requires you to have an online social media presence, and I'm not a branding expert by far, but that is definitely what I've seen is A, be consistent and make sure you're posting every day, but also B, you want to build those genuine relationships, not to see what you're going to get out of them, but just because you want to have those genuine relationships that are going to be beneficial to it. It's just like networking. It's old school networking with a new school flair. So now you got to beat the pavement, but you're beating the pavement is online. And are you commenting on stuff? Are you supporting other people? You can't just start your merchandise page and start selling. That's going to be difficult. All right, so Dania, if you want to close us out, thank you guys, everyone. Again, if you want to follow me, my Instagram is Doc Miller Nurse Coach, all one word. I believe most of you guys are probably already following me. And then on LinkedIn, you can find me, Sherika Miller. Dania, if you want to go ahead and close us out.
Sure. Again, I just want to really thank you for giving us your time and your effort and your energy and sharing your knowledge with us. I know you could be doing a million things on a Wednesday evening, and I do want to thank everyone that was able to join us tonight. We do apologize for the little technical glitch at the beginning, but thank you for sticking through it with us. Stay tuned. We recorded tonight's session, so as soon as I work with my tech folks to get it uploaded to the website, we will have it uploaded so you can watch over and over again anything that you may have missed and you didn't take notes. Stay tuned for future webinars and education.
Part 2, remember? Part 2.
There is a part 2 because we couldn't even fit everything we wanted to talk about tonight into this one webinar. So if you aren't already following us on Instagram, League of Extraordinary Black Nurses at the LEBN. And we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn if you just search for the League of Extraordinary Black Nurses. So again, thank you, Dr. Miller. Thanks for everyone who stuck through with us and all of your input and questions. If you do have further questions, you can send an email to the same place where you initially registered for tonight's webinar. And I'll be sure to relay the question to Dr. Miller, or I can answer. If I can, I'll answer myself. But thanks, guys.
All right. Have a good night, you guys.